Welcome everyone to another week of Ramban ala Torah, ala Parsha. This week we have the zchus of reading Parshas Korach. And the story of Korach will be obviously what we focus on because it's so critical to our understanding of Chumash and the relationship of Moshe Rabbeinu. But what I find most interesting about the story of Korach is the Ramban's approach. And the Ramban here, as in many, many places in the Torah, and you'll hopefully see it as we go through it, he steps back and he closes his eyes, at least that's the way I imagine it, and he asks himself, how did it really play out? Right? What was the response? How did it really play out? And here we'll see something interesting. The parsha starts, Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kas ben Levi v'dasan v'aviram b'nei Eliyav v'on ben Pelas b'nei Ruvain. And all the Mefarshim, including the Ramban, first talk about the issue of Vayikach Korach. What did he take? But let's leave that for another time. And let's focus on another question. When did this story happen? So everybody's familiar with the machlokes, Yesh mukdam muchar b'Torah, ein mukdam muchar b'Torah. Here we're going to see how that machlokes, that fundamental machlokes, plays out in our understanding of the story. I'm picking up in the middle of the first Ramban of the Parsha, V'amar Rabbi Avraham. Right? The Ramban has a tortured relationship with the Ibn Ezra. In his introduction, the Ramban talks about how much he loves Rashi, and he says we'll have, I think the quote is, Tochacha migula va'ahava nistara, in our relationship with the Ibn Ezra. Okay? This would be the Tochacha migula. Says the Ramban, V'amar Rabbi Avraham, ki zeh hadavar haya b'midbar Sinai. The first thing the Ibn Ezra says is the story did not take place after the Meraglim. The story took place back, probably after the Chet HaEgel at Har Sinai. Kashen nichlefu haBechorim v'nivdalu haLeviim. When God traded the chosen ones, the Bechorim, for Leviim. Ki chashvu Yisrael she'adonenu Moshe asa ze mida'ato latet gedula le'echav. Because Bnei Yisrael thought, according to the Ibn Ezra, that Moshe did it on his own because he wanted to make his brother the Kohen Gadol. Gam livnei kahat shem krovim elav ulechol bnei Levi shem mishpachto. He was favoring his own family. V'haLeviyim kashu alav ba'avur heyotam nitunim la'aron ulvanav. So at least you'd think the Levim would be in favor of the plan. But Levim didn't like the fact that they were nitunim la'aron ulvanav, namely, they were just assistants to Aaron. V'kashar datan va'aviram ba'avur shehisir ha'bechora me'ruvin avihem. And Dasan va'aviram were upset because they lost the Bechora. Okay? Says the Ramban, V'zeh mida'ato shel Rabbi Avraham shehu omer b'mekomot rabim ein mukdam u'mu'uchar b'Torah liritzono. Now, liritzono is not in the original text of the Machlokas in Chazal. The Ramban understands. Ein mukdam u'mu'uchar b'Torah. When he says liritzono, he means there goes the Ibn Ezra. You know, when it serves his purposes, he's going to claim that the Torah is out of order. Now, why did Ibn Ezra claim the Torah is out of order? Because he wants to take advantage of the fact that the Bechorim were pushed off and Leviim took their jobs. And obviously, you know, it's a completely different model, right? I'm a second-born. If my older brother was served in the Beis HaMikdash, I would feel more connected, right? At the time when the Bechorim were going to take over the Avoda and the Mikdash, it was, we'll use the word democratic. Every family who had a firstborn had what we think of as a Levi. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu changed that plan. And Korach took advantage of the unhappiness over that to try to challenge Moshe. Okay? But says the Ramban, it's not true. Ukvar katavti, ki al da'ati kol HaTorah kiseder. Ramban says, no, yesh mukdam muchar b'Torah, there has to be an order to the Torah. Zulati b'makom asher yifaresh hakatuv ha'akdama v'ha'ichur. Except for places where the Torah makes it absolutely clear. And we'll see some of those places. The Torah gives you dates. So it's clear that this happened before that. V'gam sham litzarech inyanu l'tam nachon. There has to be a reason for it. Aval. Haya hadavar hazeh b'midbar paran. So what does the Ramban say? The Ramban says, no. This happened, you know when Korach took place? Exactly after Shlach. It's all in chronological order. B'kadesh b'nei achar ma'aseh amraglim. V'hanachon bidrash sheka'as Korach al nisiyut el tzafon k'ma'amar rabotenu. Says the Ramban, Chazal are right. Korach was jealous. He was jealous of El Safan. Why? El Safan was put in charge of all the Nevi'im. Korach said to himself, wait, my grandfather had 4 sons, Amram, Yitzhar, Chevron, and Uziel. Amram, one of his sons became Moshe Rabbeinu, one of his sons became Aaron HaKohen. I'm the second son. I'm the Bechor of Yitzhar. I should get the job. It shouldn't go to Uziel's son. He's the 4th son. So it's just jealousy. Says the Ramban, he was jealous. But that's not what he complained about. Rather, he said, Vikine gamba Aharon. Not only that, he was jealous of Aaron. Kamoshen Amar uvi kashtem gam kehuna. V'nimshechu datan va'aviranimo. So Dasan and Aviram, who weren't Leviim at all, they followed along. V'lo ala b'chora. But the Ramban says here that Ibn Ezra is wrong. They didn't challenge Moshe over the Bechor. Why? Ki Yaakov avihem hu asher bitel meruvein unetal al Yosef. It was Yaakov Avinu who gave the Bechorah from Reuven to Yosef. It wasn't Moshe. Why would they get upset at Moshe about that? Aval gam heim amru ta'anatam lahamitenu ba'midbar. But they felt, after the Chet HaMeraglim, we're never getting out of the Midbar. That's the number one driving force for the Ramban. The people realized they're never going into Eretz Yisrael, and they were frustrated by that. V'hine Yisrael b'hiotam b'midbar Sinai lo ira lahem shum ra'ah. If you go back to Midbar Sinai, says the Ramban, everything was great. Ki gam bidvar ha'egel shehaya ha'chet gadol mefursam, even with respect to chet ha'egel, hayu ha'meitim muatim. Very few people died. V'nitzlu b'tfilato shel Moshe shehit napel alehem 40 yom v'arba'im laila. Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai, davened 40 days and 40 nights, and he got God to forgive Klal Yisrael. Now here's the Ramban's closing his eyes and imagining the situation. He says, V'hine hayu ohavim oto kinafsham. They loved Moshe Rabbeinu. V'shomim elav. And they listened to everything he said. V'ilu haya adam mored al Moshe bizman hahu. And if somebody said something negative about Moshe Rabbeinu at that time, hayu ha'am soklim oto. Right? They would kill a person. It's Moshe Rabbeinu you're talking about. V'lachein saval Korach gidulat Aharon. V'savlu ha'bichorim ma'alat ha'leviyim v'chol ma'aseh shel Moshe. So because Moshe Rabbeinu, do it in our language, his ratings were very high. Klal Yisrael, he was at 90%. The approval of Moshe Rabbeinu as the manning of Klal Yisrael was at 90%. So in politics, it's the same thing. No one's going to attack a leader who has such high approval ratings. Aval, bivoam el midbar paran. V'nisrafu ba'esh tavera, umeisu b'kivrot hatava rabim. Right? There was a plague. There were people who died over the meat. V'ka'asher chatu b'meraglim lo hitpalel Moshe. This is a close call. The Ramban thinks Moshe Rabbeinu didn't really daven for Klal Yisrael after the meraglim because they had no choice. He just davened to sort of extend the period of time in which God would deal with them. V'lo batla hagzera mehem. And Moshe didn't get God to forgive them completely. On top of that, Umeitu nisiyei kalashvatim b'magefah lifnei Hashem, and the 10 evil meraglim who were also nisiyim died. And now the worst thing, v'nigzar al kala am sheyitamu b'midbar v'sham yamutu, and the people realized after Moshe told them they're never going to go into Eretz Yisrael. Az haita nefesh kol ha'am mara. Moshe's approval rating plummeted. The people were frustrated. V'hayu omrim b'libam ki yavo lahem b'divrei Moshe takalot. They saw Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership is not perfect. On the contrary, it's much worse. V'az matza Korach makom lachlok al ma'asav. Now Korach, being a smart man, says, this is the moment. It's true. All these things are unrelated. But this is the moment that I could challenge Moshe and I could challenge Aaron. V'chashav ki yishmu elav ha'am. And he thought correctly, this is a time where the people might listen to me. V'zed tam lahamitenu b'midbar. Amru, hine heveita otanu ala makom hazeh v'lo kiyamta banu ma shenadarta lanu. Eretz zavav chalav udvash. Ki lo natata lanu nachal klal. You haven't given us anything, Moshe. What have you done for us? Aval namut b'midbar v'nhiya kalim sham. We'll just die here. Ki gam zareinu lo yetze min hamidbar, etc. He says, you're telling us now our children will go into Eretz Yisrael. We don't believe you. You didn't take us in, why would you take them in? So says the Ramban, what Korach did is basically put together a coalition of the disaffected. There's these different groups. There's the Bechorim, who are upset that they lost that. The Levim, who had to work for the Kohanim. They're different groups. And in fact, as the story plays out in the Pesukim, you see it's true, right? 250 people have to do the Ketoras off, right? The contest with the Ketoras. But Dasan and Aviram are still at their tent, and they suffer an earthquake. Anyway, what the Ramban says is what Korach did was wait for a moment where Moshe's leadership was weakest and jump on him and get all these different people and tell everybody, I'm working for you, I'm working for you, I'm working for you. The truth doesn't matter. He's getting all these people to buy in so that he can attack Moshe Rabbeinu. V'kachava. That's what happened. And the story plays out as it plays out. Okay, that's the first Ramban on the Parsha. Second one is a quick one, but it speaks to, and I don't really understand it, why the Ramban loves Aaron HaKohen so much. And he really loved Aaron HaKohen, no matter the fact that when you read in the Pesukim, it seems like Aaron may have made mistakes from time to time. Not in the Ramban. So Pasuk Dalet says, Vayishma Moshe vayipol al panav. Now, being a very thoughtful and close reader of the Chumash, the Ramban wonders why vayipol al panav, why not vayiplu al pneihem? Aren't there two of them, as happened many other times in Bamidbar, right? They fall on their faces. My daughter once said to me, Bamidbar, isn't that the book where Moshe and Aaron fall on their faces all the time? So that's what's happening. So says the Ramban, why not? V'lo vayiplu, Pasuk Dalet, Ki Aharon b'musaro u'bikdushato lo ana davar b'chal ha'machloket hazo. Aaron had nothing to do with this. Why not? Vahi k'macharish. He was quiet. U'kimodeh shema'alat Korach gidola mima'alato. Aaron is such a tzaddik, he thought Korach was right. Why should I be the Kohen Gadol? Let Korach be the Kohen Gadol. Aval hu oseh kidvar Moshe u'mekayem gzerat hamelech. But Moshe Rabbeinu says he should be the Kohen Gadol, so he'll be the Kohen Gadol. It's an unbelievable insight. Says the Ramban, I think Aaron was supporting Korach. In practice, he obviously did what Moshe said, but he said a person of his self-awareness, a person of his tzidkus, a person of his anava is saying, no, I got to think that Korach would be better than me. It's really like a shocking thing, although it makes you think that Korach had personal, qualities that we gloss over. Right? Let's say the Ramban's right, because the Ramban's right. So if we say that, it means Aaron knew who Korach was. He wasn't just a clown. He must have had redeeming personal qualities. He must have had a reason why he thought, I could be the Kohen Gadol. And Aaron agreed with him. So, okay, just a side point, a small point, but an important point that Aaron may have been, on the other team for these purposes. Okay. So Moshe tells them, let's have a ketoret off. Let's have a contest. Okay, you guys bring ketoras, Aaron brings ketoras. Let's see whose ketoras will be accepted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's an interesting idea. We know it since we're kids that that's the contest that's going to determine. But the Ramban notices something interesting, which is, when did HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell Moshe Rabbeinu that this is how we should decide things? Right? Where does that come from? It's not in any pasuk. And here you have the Ramban's insight into Parshas Korach, but you also have a bigger idea in the Ramban. I'm in pasuk Hey, about the middle of the Ramban. He says, first idea, he's going to have a number of ideas, and we should get used to this. The Ramban often gives a number of answers, a number of explanations. Sometimes he tells you what he really thinks. Sometimes he just leaves it out there, right? There are multiple levels in the Ramban. There's Pshat, there's Drash, there's Kabbalah, it's all there. He says, V'hinei, Moshe me'atzmo chashav ha'machshava hazot. It was Moshe's idea. V'ratza biktot yoter mishar karbanot. Why? Ki ra'akvar binadav v'avihu ki b'hakrivam kitoret zara lifnei Hashem nisrafu. He knew this ketoris is a big deal. It kills people. So Moshe, maybe in a negative way, thought, let's get the ketoris involved. V'hitir la'aharon lahaktiro talit tzarach hasha'ah. So then how did he let Aaron bring ketoris for no reason? So the answer is no. Aaron brought ketoris because it was necessary for this contest. Alternatively, or it could be This is the Ketores that Aaron brought every morning in the Mishkan. Uvatach Moshe ki Hashem mekim dvar avdo va'atzat malachav yashlim. And Moshe trusted that even though it was his idea, HaKadosh Baruch Hu would play it through the way he thought. V'yesh omrim. That's one answer. Another possibility. V'yesh omrim. Ki vayishma Moshe vayipol al panav lidrosh et Hashem ladat ma ya'aseh. When Moshe, he didn't fall on his face because he was scared, he fell on his face to daven. And he had a nevuah then. Va'az ne'mar lo boker v'yodas Hashem es hashelo v'es hakadosh v'yikriv alav, right? God told him at that moment to do the Torah contest. Now, this reminds us very much of Moshe in front of Paro, right? Where the problem is, Paro says to Moshe, you're not going to see me again, because the day you see me, you're going to die. But Moshe then gives him the whole warning about Makas Bechoros. And the Ramban says the same thing there. In front of Paro, God appeared to Moshe Rabbeinu and told him what to say. So here too, in front of all of Klal Yisrael, God appeared to Moshe and he told him, let's have the Torah's contest. Now, why does this matter so much in the Ramban? It matters for the following reason. Says the Ramban, V'lo nizkar zerak b'sipur Moshe la'am. None of this is mentioned, only when Moshe tells it over to the people. Ukvar hariticha ki b'mekomot rabim pa'am yarich b'dibur Hashem al Moshe v'yikatzer b'sipur Moshe upam yaseh behefech. Says the Ramban, there is no rule, right? Often we say to ourselves, why is this parsha so long in the Torah? Why is this so short? How come sometimes it says, Vayomer Hashem al Moshe lemor, and then you have Moshe telling Klal Yisrael again, and sometimes it doesn't have that. Says the Ramban, there is no rule. V'lifamim lo yazkir ha'achad klal ka'asher ba b'maaseh b'nei Gad u'b'nei Ruvain shesiper ha'katuv ha'maaseh b'Moshe ba'atzmo v'hu na'asa al pi Hashem. It doesn't say in the story of the 2.5 tribes, Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe lemor. There's no reason to say that. In the context of the story, it becomes clear that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe what to do. But the Torah doesn't have to tell us every time. Kimo shamru et asher diber Hashem la'avodecha kein na'aseh. Right? At the end of the story, the Shvatim say, that which God told you will do. Well, when did God tell you? So the answer is, it doesn't say in the Torah. The Torah can choose to tell the story once. The Torah can choose to tell the story twice. Right? The Torah can choose, as in Bereshis with Eliezer and Rivka, tell you the story 3 times. And the Torah might choose not to tell you the story at all. But you have to understand from the context what happened. Okay. V'katuv b'Yeshua el eretz hagilad el eretz hachuzotam asher nochazu ba al pi Hashem biyad Moshe. God told Moshe, Vim nomar shehayakein mipnei haskamat Hashem ki inyan shamar zot haaretz asher titnachalu ota b'gorel asher tziva Hashem latet l'tisha matot v'chatzi amateh v'yeh zeh min hadvarim she'asa Moshe mida'ato v'iskim HaKadosh Baruch Hu al yado eino nachon sheyaseh Moshe davar b'chiluk haaretz ela birshut ki hakol b'mitzvat Hashem yaseh dichtiv lo ela techalek haaretz v'gomer. He says you can't read the story otherwise. Talking about the 2.5 tribes who wanted to live in Ever HaYarden, he says it can't be that Moshe, with respect to the Nachla, made a decision on his own. It was too important to all of Klal Yisrael. It's clear in the context that God told Moshe, even though the psukim are less than clear. Now back to us. V'da'ati bazeh. The Ramban tells us, but I think not that Moshe got it b'nevuah, and not that Moshe thought of it on his own. Something similar. V'da'ati bazeh. U'b'ma shamar la'aron kachat ha'machta v'sim kitoret. Shehaita alav yad Hashem bahem. He was divinely inspired. V'hu hanikra ruach hakodesh. This is important. Says the Ramban, there's a difference between nevuah. Nevuah is word for word. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe X, Y, and Z, and ruach hakodesh. Ruach hakodesh, I would call some divine intuition. Moshe Rabbeinu thinks to himself, what would HaKadosh Baruch Hu want me to do now? If he would want me to bring Ketoret and have them bring Ketoret and have the world see who's right and who's wrong, I should do that. It says the Ramban, Kinyan b'sifrei David u'Shlomo shehayu bu'ruach hakodesh. Right? Nobody refers to David and Shlomo as Nevi'im. But says the Ramban, they had Ruach HaKodesh. Ruach HaKodesh is something real. It's not some mystical thing that we speak about Ruach HaKodesh now because we don't know what it is. I certainly don't know what it is. But says the Ramban, if you spend, and let me see if I can find the line here. Kumo shama ruach Hashem diber bi umilato al lishoni Ki Moshe Rabbeinu b'chol beito ne'emanhu. He says Moshe Rabbeinu was Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu's ideas are different than my ideas and your ideas. Moshe Rabbeinu knew HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He knew him directly. He saw him peh el peh. And therefore, when Moshe Rabbeinu has an idea, it came from him, says the Ramban. God didn't intervene at all. Moshe Rabbeinu had this idea. But the idea came from his Ruach HaKodesh, not just from some intelligence that he has. What is Ruach HaKodesh? It would be hard for me to try to answer that question. It's a level less than Nevuah. It's a level above intelligence. More than that is hard to say, but the Ramban felt that Moshe Rabbeinu had that, and Moshe Rabbeinu used that insight, that sixth sense, to guess that Ketor was the thing that he wanted from God, and to make sure that that worked. Okay, let's do one last one. This is something that often comes up in the Ramban, which is where you box yourself in, because on the one hand, and on the other hand, I'll explain what I mean. At the end of the story, towards the end of the confrontation with Korach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, "Vayidara Hashem Moshe ve'Aaron leimor, hibadelu mitoch ha'edah hazot va'achale osam kiraga." Right, I'm going to destroy them. Vayipelu al pneihem vayamru el Elohei haruchot lechol basar ha'ish echad yachatav al kol ha'edah tiktsof. Right, you're going to destroy everyone when only one person sinned. The Ramban asks the obvious question. Pasuk Chaf Aleph says the Ramban Yesh li shol. Right, it's an in-between type of question. Yesh li shol. I think it's a good question. Im Yisrael lo chatu v'lo mardu b'rabam. If, as Moshe Rabbeinu said, why are you going? If Ha'ish Echad Yachatav Al Kol Ha'edah Tiksof, if they didn't really rebel against Moshe, Lama Hayaha Ketzaf Alehem Lomar Va'achalel Tam Karaga. What was God so angry about? V'im gam heim mardu ki Korach v'cha'adato. And let's say they really did rebel. Eich yomru Moshe ve'Aaron Ha'ish Echad Yachatav Al Kol Ha'edah Tiksof. Right? Either Bnei Yisrael sinned and Moshe and Aaron are lying, or Bnei Yisrael didn't sin, and why is God so angry? Right? Oftentimes we get to situations in the Torah where we're sort of boxed in by either side. So says the Ramban, it's not the greatest answer, but the Ramban feels the need to try to answer these questions. He says, I'm skipping a bunch in the Ramban, Aval hatam ki mitchila haya lev ha'am acharei Moshe ve'Aaron. So if you play through the story, everybody at the beginning was with Moshe and Aaron. V'kasher likacho Korach va'adato ish machtato v'yasimu alem kitoret v'amdu petach al moed im Moshe ve'Aaron oz kara Korach l'chol ha'edah v'amar lohem ki b'chvod kulam hu mekaneh. Then Korach makes a big speech saying, I'm not doing this for me. He's lying. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for you. Vayitav hadavar be'einehem. The people fell for it. Right, again, combined with all the bad things that were going on, including not going into Eretz Yisrael, the people fell for it. V'nikalu kulam lirot ulai yishar b'nehu Elokim. Maybe Korach is right. They watched. V'tashuv ha'avodah libchorehem. The Ramban is stuck on that point that the avodah would go back to the Bechorim because, again, it's two different models of avodas Hashem. And there is something really compelling about a model in which every family, more or less, has a Levi. Okay? Now, so now Korach is winning and he's getting people to support him. So they at that moment, Bnei Yisrael should have been destroyed. Bnei Yisrael in that moment, when they thought really it should go back to the Bechorim, they were rebelling against Moshe Rabbeinu. They were rebelling against God. They believed in their heart that Moshe was wrong. But Moshe and Aaron claimed nobody actually sinned. The only person who did an action, who challenged Moshe, who acted disrespectfully, and he really did, was Korach. V'hu hagorem, v'hu hamifateh. He was the cause. He seduced the people. Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Korach deserves to die. Because Korach is at cause, is at fault for all this. It's true, Bnei Yisrael fell for it. But they fell for it b'machshava v'lo b'dibur, v'lo b'maaseh, God forbid. They thought to themselves, maybe Korach is right. But beyond that, they didn't do anything. It was Korach's fault, it was Korach's action, and therefore Moshe and Aaron say to him, only Korach should be punished, not the rest. It happens to be that the sense you get from reading Psukim is that Moshe took all of this personally. When Benot Slavchad come to Moshe and they say, Avinu meit bamidbar, v'hu lo haya ba'adat Korach, the sense you get is that they knew. Had he been part of the Korach rebellion, Moshe wouldn't have given them the time of day. That Moshe took it personally and it mattered to him. But because they weren't part of the Korach rebellion, you have the sense, as actually happened, that Moshe would listen to them and have some sympathy. So again, just to review, the whole idea of the rebellion is Korach getting a whole bunch of different groups, says the Ramban, to be angry at Moshe. Why now? Because now things are going south. After the Ched HaMeraglim, after the Ched HaSlav, after the Kivot HaTa'ava, after HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to them, you're never going into Eretz Yisrael, there's a depression, there's a frustration. And Korach, like a great politician, waited for his moment. And then he gets all of Klal Yisrael, all the different groups, none of whom share any ideas, right? It's almost like currently in Israel, not to take a position one way or the other, our hatred for the prime minister unifies us. It does work. It's part of human nature. And the Ramban says that's what Korach took advantage of. Aaron wasn't part of anything because Aaron is a tzaddik. Aaron, in fact, would have been happy for Korach to be the Kohen Gadol. That's a huge chiddush. Moshe had this idea on his own. He had Ruach HaKodesh to try to have the idea of the Ketores making a difference. And finally, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron arguing in favor of Klal Yisrael, sort of as an in-between position. On the one hand, it's not true that only Korach sinned. Everybody sinned. On the other hand, only Korach sinned. When we think of a sin, we think of a ma'aseh, we think of a disrespectful action, we think of the things Korach did. Bnei Yisrael didn't do those things, therefore, let's save Bnei Yisrael. Okay? It's enough for today. Shabbat Shalom to everyone, and see you next week.